The battlefield was cloaked in a tense silence. The Achaeans and Trojans stood still, gripping their swords, their eyes locked on their enemies. But fate had decided to delay this bloodbath. A single man stepped back, his gaze darting around anxiously. Paris. Menelaus's eyes burned with excitement. He had found his enemy. But Paris, overcome with fear, tried to retreat. Hector saw this, and fury exploded within him. His blood boiled, his hand clenched tightly around his sword. He stormed toward his brother, his voice like thunder. "Are you a king? Are you a warrior, Paris? You started this war over a woman, and now you run like a coward. I wish you had never been born." Paris knew his brother was right. He could not run. He had caused this war. He swallowed hard, took a deep breath, and offered Menelaus a duel. Whoever wins shall have Helene, and the war will end here. Hector was pleased with these words. He raised his voice, halting the battle. Across the field, Agamemnon noticed the commotion and called out to the Achaeans. The armies stood still, waiting for the duel between Paris and Menelaus. Menelaus demanded a fair fight. Sacrifices would be made to the gods, and oaths would be sworn. The Trojans would offer to the sun and Mother Earth, while the Achaeans would dedicate their prayers to Zeus. Hector hurried to summon his father Priam. Meanwhile, the gods on Olympus watched eagerly. Iris, taking the form of Laodice, Priam's most beautiful daughter, found Helene and whispered to her, "Two men are fighting for you, Helene. One shall claim you as his own." Helene felt as if a dagger had pierced her heart. Tears welled in her eyes. Nostalgia gripped her, longing for her homeland, for her past, for the life she had left behind. She gathered her attendants and walked toward the battlefield. From the high towers of Troy, the city's elders sat, watching the war unfold. Their eyes followed Helene, and one of them murmured, "She is worth fighting for. But even so, I wish she had never come here, and this war had never begun." Priam turned to them and said, "It is not men who have caused this war, it is the gods." Then he faced Helene and pointed toward a warrior in the distance. "Who is that towering man?" Helene lowered her head. "Agamemnon," she said, "second only to Achilles, he is the mightiest commander of the Achaeans." Priam nodded with admiration. "What a fortunate man to command such an army." He then pointed to another figure. Helene allowed herself a small smile. "That is Odysseus, king of Ithaca. He is famed for his cunning mind." Antenor spoke up, recalling the past. "Yes, once Odysseus and Menelaus came to Troy as envoys. I hosted them in my house. Odysseus may have seemed quiet, but once he spoke, none could stand against him." Helene scanned the field for Castor and Polydeuces, her brothers. But they were nowhere to be seen. A terrible feeling crept into her chest. "Why have my brothers not come?" she whispered. The truth was her brothers had long since perished, but Helene did not yet know. The sacrifices were made. Priam declared that he would not watch the duel and left the battlefield. Hector and Odysseus measured the ground and established the rules. Finally, Paris and Menelaus armed themselves and faced each other. Paris struck first. He hurled his spear at Menelaus, but it failed to pierce his armor. Menelaus silently prayed to Zeus. "This man welcomed me into his home, then disgraced my honor. Let me punish him." Then he launched his spear, and it struck true. It pierced Paris' armor, but did not take his life. Menelaus wasted no time. He drew his sword and brought it crashing down on Paris' helmet, but the blade shattered. Undeterred, he grabbed Paris by the chin strap of his helmet and tried to slam him into the earth. And then the gods intervened. Aphrodite, unseen and untouchable, broke the strap of the helmet. Menelaus was left holding only an empty helm, while Paris vanished from his grasp. At that moment, a mist swirled around Paris. Aphrodite had enveloped him in a divine shroud and carried him away from battle, delivering him safely to his chamber. Then she turned her attention to Helene. Disguised as an old woman, she approached and whispered, "Paris awaits you. Go to him." But Helene recognized the goddess at once. Her eyes flared with fury. "How long will you drag me through this, Aphrodite?" Menelaus was the rightful victor. Paris should have faced his fate. If you love him so much, take him for yourself. Aphrodite's eyes darkened with warning. "Do not anger me, Helene. I could leave you here, and the Achaeans would tear you apart." Helene shuddered. She knew the power of the gods. Reluctantly, she obeyed. Paris smirked when he saw her. "Menelaus won only with Athena's aid," he murmured. "But I have gods of my own, Helene. Come, let us forget this war." Helene looked at him with undisguised contempt. She hated him, but she was trapped in this fate, a prisoner of the gods. And so she fell into his embrace. Meanwhile, Menelaus roared in fury. Paris had vanished, and the Trojans were outraged. Menelaus turned to Agamemnon, his voice shaking the air. "Victory is mine! Return Helene, and all that is hers." The Achaeans shouted in agreement. Was the war over? But the gods would not allow it to end. At the peak of Olympus, the gods had gathered. The ruler of the skies, Zeus, leaned back on his throne and took the floor. "Menelaus is supported by Athena and Hera," he said, "but Paris has only Aphrodite behind him." Aphrodite saved Paris from death, but what should we do now? Shall we end the war here or continue? These words filled Athena and Hera with fury. Hera could no longer contain her rage and exploded. "Are you asking me this, Zeus?" she cried. "I gathered the armies for this war. I want Priam's children dead. If you want to end the war, then end it. But know that not all gods are on your side." Zeus narrowed his eyes. "Your ambition, Hera, will tear us apart." He added with a scowl, "Priam and the people of Ilium are loyal to me. They never fail in their sacrifices or feasts. But if you insist on their destruction, know that one day even the cities I love will fall under your wrath. And when that day comes, I will not stop you." Hera held her breath. Zeus had just named the cities he loved most: Argos, Sparta, Mycenae. And if Zeus ever wished to destroy these cities, she would not oppose him. But the thought of all her efforts to destroy Troy going to waste was unbearable. Finally, Hera spoke. "Fine," she said, "let us accommodate each other, but Troy must break the truce today and continue the war." Zeus nodded slowly. "So be it." Athena swiftly descended from Olympus to the mortal world. She took the form of Laodocus, Antenor's son, and found Pandarus, the king of Lycia. She whispered poison in his ear. "If you kill Menelaus now, Paris will reward you with gold. You will return to your city in glory." Pandarus was confused. He drew his bow, nocked an arrow, and took aim. But Athena did not betray Menelaus's fate. She diverted the arrow. It pierced Menelaus's armor, but only grazed him lightly, drawing a small amount of blood. When Agamemnon saw his brother wounded, he roared in fury. If Menelaus died here, the Achaean army would return to Argos, and that disgrace was unacceptable. Menelaus, though wounded, claimed his injury was light, but Agamemnon insisted that a healer be summoned. Talthybios hurried to find Machaon, the son of Asclepius, who came with his medicinal herbs. with the potions and healing knowledge passed down from his father, Machaon tended to Menelaus's wound, but the battle did not stop. Agamemnon moved through the ranks, rallying his troops. He approached King Idomeneus of Crete and praised him. "The Trojans have broken their oaths," Idomeneus said. "We will end this war." He then moved to the two Aias brothers. He had no words for them. "If everyone were as brave as you two, Troy would have fallen long ago," he said. When he saw Nestor of Pylos, the old man stood firm, issuing orders as his warriors lined up like a fortress. Agamemnon felt a pang of sorrow for Nestor's age. Nestor, in turn, muttered, "If only I could return to the days when I killed Eurythalion." Agamemnon found Menestheus and Odysseus lagging behind. He urged them to step forward, but Odysseus scowled, narrowing his eyes. "Follow me, Agamemnon. You will see just how hard we fight," he retorted. Agamemnon turned to Diomedes, son of Tydeus. Why was Diomedes not on the front lines? His father, Tydeus, had fought against Thebes, a hero renowned for his courage. Yet here was his son, lagging behind. Diomedes remained silent, but Sthenelus, his companion, could not hold back. "We are better than our fathers. We took Thebes with a smaller army." Diomedes touched his friend's arm and silenced him. "Agamemnon is the one who commands the war," he said. "We must not be angry with his words." He then urged his horses forward, heading to the front. Without Achilles, the battle would still turn in their favor. The Achaeans, following their leader, marched on, while the Trojans, like a scattered flock of sheep, were divided. Each man was guided by a different god. Athena stirred the Achaeans' courage. Ares whispered to the Trojans, filling them with the glory of blood and battle. Deimos, Phobos, and Eris roamed the battlefield, and the war raged on. Antilochus struck down the Trojan warrior Echepolus with his spear. Elephenor tried to drag Echepolus' body, but was killed by Agenor. Aias, the son of Telamon, knocked Simoeisle to the ground. Leucos, Odysseus' friend, was struck by Priam's son Antiphos' spear. Odysseus went mad with rage. He threw his spear and killed Democune, Priam's illegitimate son. Hector and the Trojan forces began to retreat. But from the heights of Pergamos, a voice rang out. Apollo called to the Trojans, "Achilles is not fighting. You have nothing to fear. Your swords and spears will pierce everything." These words set fire to the hearts of the Trojans. The battle reignited. Paeros, son of Imbrasos, killed Diores with a massive stone. Thoas killed Paeros with a spear. But Paeros' men took down Thoas, and the battlefield filled with the bodies of the fallen. Dust, blood, and death. That day, a heap of Trojans and Achaeans lay side by side, their bodies scattered across the ground. The war would continue, with prayers rising to the heavens above Olympus.